The South is a region of the country that historically has had the lowest segregation since 1970 for Black and white children for a couple of different reasons that other research has shown. One is that the South was the focus of many court-ordered desegregation efforts, and so there are many plans put in place that try to create more desegregated schools in a more comprehensive way than other regions of the country. We sought to look at the districts in the 7 counties in the South that have seceded since 2000, and a key finding is that segregation between districts, particularly between Black and white students, has risen, specifically when we look at school segregation, but also we saw in the last few years a lagged effect in terms of rising residential segregation as well. A second finding that I think perhaps would have been more expected, but I think is still worth us thinking about the implications of, is the way in which Black-white segregation changes were more substantial than that for Hispanic white and Asian white, and for multiracial as well. And so the theory that was guiding us here in thinking about secession is this idea of social closure, that in places in which white and Black groups, for example, feel like they are getting to be relatively similar, that white families that have more resources may use the opportunity to draw boundaries to try to protect the relative advantage, which you can argue that the creation of a school district is doing. The larger units that were being used in many parts of the South, county-wide school districts, helped to enable student assignments so that it could incorporate both students of color and white students within the same school district. That made it easier, as a matter of course, to create more desegregated schools. So the impetus for this paper was to try to understand, is this creation of new school districts that's carving out school districts in the county-wide districts in the South, is that endangering one of the real structures that has enabled the South to be such a desegregated region in the country for Black and white students? I think these findings matter for a couple of different reasons. First, we see a tremendous variety between all the states in our country in terms of the ability with which communities can form their own districts, what we call secession here, or not. These are of concern given our research and other research that shows that secession may be a new form of segregation that is occurring in the 21st century that is still replicating patterns of racial inequality in our communities and our schools. There are different implications depending on what group we're thinking about. So for policymakers, I think a really key takeaway here is thinking about the way in which these decisions about school district boundaries are, for example, having this lagged effect potentially for residential patterns. And so the decision to permit or not permit the creation of a new school district unit is going to have ramifications across the different areas of our government. In terms of teachers and principals, I think too, they are the ones on every day who are seeing the impacts of the policy decisions that are being made. And I think the extent to which it becomes harder to educate children in segregated schools that oftentimes have unequal resources, we need to be thinking about what these decisions may be doing to the jobs we're asking them to do as educators.